settle down so that we can begin this evening's session. Thank you. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our COP27 side event on China-Africa cooperation on renewable energy. This evening's session is co-hosted by the Institute for Environment and Development Sustainability, the China Renewable Energy Industries Association, and African Energy Now. My name is Nobantu Mudise. I am Communications Manager for African Energy Now. And there's such a hive of activity at COP, so we really appreciate all of you making the time to join us this evening. We'll begin with our special thanks. We'd like to extend a vote of special thanks to His Excellency, Dr. Ing Habtamu Mutefwa, the Minister of Water and Energy for Ethiopia. Special thanks to the Honorable Hamis Hamza Hamis, the Deputy Minister of State in the Tanzanian Vice President's Office, and Mr. Li Junfeng, President of the China Renewable Energy Industries Association. All protocol observed. So it is quite fitting that we find ourselves in Egypt, organizing ourselves around renewable energies, when of course the ancient Egyptian civilization was one of the first to actually use solar energy. And now today, African governments are striving towards a rapid development and expansion of renewable energy systems to increase energy access and realize reliable, cost-effective energy solutions across the continent. On the other hand, we have China, a world leader in renewable energy, and that has been working closely with many African nations to advance the generation, transmission, and distribution of energy from renewable sources on the continent. There's a renewed commitment on China's behalf from the energy industry, its financial institutions, and its knowledge partners to support the accelerated proliferation of renewable energy technologies across Africa. So through tonight's proceedings, we'll see a high-level commitment on behalf of African states and China on renewable energy cooperation, and some opportunities and specific ways for this enhanced cooperation to happen. On tonight's agenda, we have 5 main points. First will be our opening remarks, then the very exciting launch of African Energy Now. This will be followed by keynote speeches, a panel discussion and Q&A session, and then the closing. We will be happy to answer all the questions you may have during the Q&A session, so please reserve your questions for that part of our program. And should you be posting on LinkedIn or Twitter, please use the hashtags African Energy Now and hashtag China Africa COP27. Right, so we will begin with our opening remarks. And first is joining us via live stream, His Excellency, Dr. Ing Habtamu Mutefwa, the Minister of Water and Energy from Ethiopia. Honorable Minister, we can see you. We cannot hear you though. Can you unmute yourself?
I can't hear. I'm unmuted.
Beautiful. Yes, we can hear you. You're welcome to make your opening address.
Can I go ahead?
You may proceed, sir. Okay, there must be a delay in the feed. You're welcome to resume your opening address, sir.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I feel honored to be part of this site event on COP27, China-Africa Cooperation on Renewable Energy. And I thank all the coordinators for inviting me to this special session. As we know, energy is the basic for livelihood improvements of nations, citizens. In Ethiopia, my country, we have population of more than 120 million, where more than 63 million people have no access, or we can say deficit to electricity. Though we do have such kind of huge people with wide land, still we are wanting to sure that our potential of our energy source, especially renewable energy, from hydropower, from wind, from solar, geothermal, and so on, really will make one day a future bright in Ethiopia as well as for our neighboring nation, totally in the region of East Africa and even more than that. And just to mention a few of them, our hydropower potential is about 45 gigawatts. Wind is about 10 gigawatts, geothermal 5.6 gigawatts, solar 5.2 kilowatt hour per meter square. We can imagine how really we are blessed with huge renewable energy potential. So far, we have developed around 4.8 megawatts from hydropower and 431 megawatt from other renewable energy sources. So we have so much big potential, as I mentioned. Whatever we have developed is, we can say it is pulled from the ocean, where my nation, our country still need big energy demand. One thing, just what I will really guarantee you, any of private sectors who want to work in Ethiopia on the energy, we are creating fertile ground, fertile environment, so that people can come, invest in Ethiopia, and they get payback, and they also contribute to our energy demand. To mention a few of them, currently we are revising our energy policy, where we believe in the coming 10 years, the involvement of private sector will be vital, especially on the renewable energy, focusing on the solar, wind, geothermal, and so on. From the policy, the PPP model, the private-public partnership model, really will give the investors a guarantee that they can come and work and get appropriate payback. The other one, which we have successfully done, is institutional reform, where my ministry is actually engaged on three main pillar works. One is the energy sector, the other one is the water supply sector, the other one is water source management sector. So under the energy sector, one of the CO, executive officer, will be handling total renewable energy, focusing on the solar, wind, and other aspects. This is the second point that will make Ethiopia preferable in terms of this kind of options. Third, and a very important one is
It's done. Okay. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We'll now move on to the second opening remarks. His Excellency January Y. Makamba, Tanzania's Minister of Energy, sends his apologies. In his stead, we are joined by the Honorable Hamis Hamza Hamis, Deputy Minister of State in the Office of the Vice President.
I think I'm disconnected.
I missed that?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Okay, beautiful. Our second opening remark, coming from Honorable Hamis Hamza Hamis, Deputy Minister of State in the Office of the Vice President.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the Minister of Water and Energy from Ethiopia, the President of China, a remarkable energy, the Director of Energy, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of the Excellency, the Minister of Energy from Tanzania, His Excellency Mr. January Makamba, I would like to present the remarks from this ministry Ladies and gentlemen, it's good to see you here today on this wonderful occasion. I'm very pleased to celebrate the launch of African Energy Now program and the INDE and the new partnership between the government of Tanzania and the program together. We will make Tanzania premier investment destination for renewable energy project in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my sincerely appreciation to you, to all of you for being here with us today and the team of African Energy now for hosting this event. Over the past 2 decades, increasingly unreliable rainfall patterns and more frequent and prolonged drought have created a sense of urgency that is engendering transformation of Tanzania's power sector, which has traditionally relied on hydropower, whereby this situation has induced the power crisis and increased the dependence on expensive and environmental polluting fossil fuels, most of which must be imported. Ladies and gentlemen, earlier of this year, the President of United Republic of Tanzania, Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan, announced a new national goal of producing 60,000 megawatts for renewable energy by 2025. In early November, the President announced a new plan to establish a strategic task force to review and propose a national strategy on clean energy solution, whereby this was aiming to widen access and use of clean energy in Tanzania by between 80 and 90% over the next 10 years. Tanzania also, key player in the Southern and the East Africa regional energy sector. At the COP on Tuesday last week, President Samia Suluhu Hassan hosted a meeting of 12 Southern African countries and the financial institution and presented a new 18 billion plan to build a new renewable power generation across the Southern and Africa region. Tanzania has excellent renewable energy source. Solar energy is abundant. Tanzania receives a lot of sunshine in average year, ranging between 280 and 3,500 hours. Wind also exploitable in many parts of the country. In June 2020, Tanzania first ever wind farm, a 2.4 megawatt power plant, started generating electricity as part of its startup testing procedure. Tanzania immense gathered potential concentrated in the East Africa Rift Valley system. It's ripe for investment. Estimates indicate potential exceeding 650 megawatts with over 50 clusters of hot spring identified in the country. Tanzania has made sustained progress to expand the national grid and improve enabling conditions for the development of renewable energy resources. As Tanzania strives to achieve energy security, the government has instituted a range of energy sector reform. To streamline investment procedure, we have created a one-stop shop for administrative and permitting process and offer many investment tariff and tax incentives for renewable energy equipment and imports. At the end of October, Tanzania's government initiated a transformation reboot of the national power utility by controversing TANESCO's debate to equity. This will clean the utility's balance sheet, improve capacity, and most importantly, provided it with a fresh start and flexibility to compete effectively in the existing business environment and attract new investment. Ladies and gentlemen, on this, one thing is clear: against the backdrop of consistently high economic growth rate and attractive investment environment, competitive, streamlined, regulated framework, committed government, and proven capacity to generate power through partnership with investors, Tanzania is poised to become a top destination for renewable energy investment in Africa. Finally, we look forward to fulfill relationship with the African Energy Now program as we deepen our engagement with all the new partners. Together, we will bring our many existing investment-ready renewable energy projects over the finish line. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Honorable Hamza Hamis. And our final opening remarks are by Mr. Li Junfeng, President of the China Renewable Energy Industries Association. And his opening remarks will be shared through video recording.
各位来宾，大家好！非常高兴以视频的方式出席中国可再生能源协会与坦桑尼亚国际环境可持续发展研究院共同举办的中国角的活动。这次活动的主题是讨论如何共同推动中非的合作，推动能源转型，特别是利用可再生能源来推动非洲和中国的能源转型的合作。中国在过去的20多年里面，在推动能源转型方面取得了非常有重要意义的经验。1998年，中国政府颁布了节约能源法，提出了节约优先的思想。2005年，中国政府颁布了可再生能源法，推广大幅度的推广。这一段重新来吧，这一段把它掐掉哈。2005年，中国政府颁布了可再生能源法，大力推广以风能、太阳能、生物质能等可再生能源为主体的新型能源系统，加快了中国的能源转型。2014年，中国政府提出了能源革命的思想，从能源消费到能源生产、能源技术、能源机制以及国际合作方面进行了大量的部署，有效地推动了 中国的能源转型。到2021年，中国非化石能源的占比已经超过了16%，提前完成了向联合国承诺的2020年非化电占比15%的这样一个目标，并且非水的可再生能源发电，特别是风光发电，超过了1万亿千瓦时，并且为全球可再生能源供应的产业链提供了强有力的支撑和支持。到2021年，中国风电和光伏的发电成本分别与2009年哥本哈根大会相比较，下降了80%和90%，为全球能源转型做出了积极的贡献。我们希望通过这次交流，可以推动中非2个方面研究机构的大量合作，企业界的大量合作，把发展可再生能源、推动能源转型，包括提高能源效率方面的经验，与非洲的国家进行交流，避免非洲在能源转型的过程中间走发达国家的老路，即以化石能源为主体来实现现代化。所以说，这场活动非常重要。当然，这个活动也是仅仅开始。我们希望在未来，双方经过长期的合作和努力，建立起研究机构之间、行业协会之间、企业之间合作的桥梁，共同来推动中国和非洲的能源转型的合作。同时，我们也欢迎国际机构、多边金融机构以及所有的国家来共同关心非洲的能源转型，特别是发达国家和中国一块儿共同来推动非洲的能源转型。做到这一点，我们还需要本着精诚合作的这种精神，摒弃单边主义的思维方式，通过和平的竞争、和平的竞赛，推动和平的发展和和平的转型。希望我们能够携手为全球应对气候变化，特别是在本世纪中叶实现碳中和的目标，大家一起努力，共同奋斗。祝愿我们未来的合作取得积极的成功。谢谢各位。
Thank you to all our distinguished guests for their opening remarks. I now have the pleasure of handing over to my co-moderator, Mr. Alex Devesi. He's the Director of Development of African Energy Now, and he will take you through the remainder of tonight's program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nubantu, for your excellent moderation, and it's a good start. Thank you, everyone, for coming as well. Before I proceed, I would like to acknowledge Professor Pius Yanda among us. Thank you for coming, Chairman. I have seen him earlier. I don't know if he left. Okay, thank you. He is the IEDS Advisory Board Chairman and member of the IPCC panel. Having said this, I would like to proceed with the next phase of the program and would like to invite our CEO, Moritz Weigel, to the stage and present what actually Africa Energy Now is and what we intend to procure in the next years. Thank you, Moritz, for coming. The floor is yours.
Could I have the slides on the screen, please? the presenter laptop to the screen? Thank you. Excellencies, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, we're very delighted to launch tonight African Energy Now in front of such a distinguished audience. I see many familiar faces in the room, and I do thank you all for coming and joining us on this occasion tonight. So, who are we? We are deal makers who make renewable energy investments happen in African countries. And we do so by connecting African governments with investors all the way from initial engagements to financial close. And we do all this free of charge. Thanks to the generous support provided by the ClimateWorks Foundation for our work. So now, here at COP27, renewable energy in Africa has finally taken center stage. We've heard a lot over the past week about the tremendous opportunities that the continent hosts and the sheer endless renewable energy resources. The International Energy Agency estimates, in fact, that there's a $2 trillion investment opportunity in sustainable power infrastructure over the next 20 years. And we all know about the great potential that the continent has in terms of renewables. For example, Africa's onshore wind potential alone equals 250 times its electricity demand. 60% of the best solar resources globally are in fact located in Africa. Yet only 1% of worldwide installed photovoltaic is on the continent. So why is this the case? Why do we have this huge potential and it's still so little used? Is it perhaps because of a lack of political commitment on the continent? Certainly not. We have 45 African countries who included quantified renewable energy targets in their national determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. And those commitments have also been going hand in hand in 14 countries just in the past 3 years alone with regulatory reforms in the renewable energy sector to attract investment. So what is it then? Is it the high cost of capital? Is it the high perceived or factual investment risks that many African countries have? Yes, sure, this is certainly a challenge. But at the same time, we see investment happening under those circumstances here on the continent. To be precise, $90 billion investments in renewable energy projects over the past decade. So what is it then? Is it perhaps a lack of projects? Well, certainly more and more African countries have strong, growing project pipelines. Just to give you an example of Tanzania, 46 renewable energy projects are investment ready in Tanzania right now. So why is the investment not happening? Not happening yet at scale. And this is where we come in. So we say if we want to accelerate call it the energy transition, or let's just say the expansion of the use of Africa's tremendous renewable energy sources, then we need to start with those projects that are already on the table. Projects like the 46 in Tanzania, where a lot of energy and resources have gone into the development and bringing them at least close to the finishing line. So we are picking up on those projects, and what we do is first we identify those projects that are technically and financially feasible. Then, if needed, our team strengthens those project documents further, including the way they are presented to different types of potential investors. then identify potential investors that fit for the project-specific circumstances. So for the specific countries, but also for the specific size and types of projects. And then we, in partnership with our government partners, engage those potential investors all the way from an initial discussion through negotiations to a financial close. This is us. We are a seasoned team of African experts. Well, me obviously being African at heart. And the question I think now maybe in closing is, why should African governments and investors work with us? What's the benefit of working with African Energy Now? So basically, the most important point is I think we accelerate the joint goal of government project owners and investors, which is making the investment happen. And how do we do that? One is we bring the investor's perspective to our government partners. So, for example, on bankability. A project may be technically and financially feasible, but that doesn't mean that it's bankable. A project is bankable if a bank thinks that it is. So it depends on the specific investment criteria of different banks. Second point, dedicated support. We're a relatively small team, so we focus on 1 or 2 projects per country to take them over the finishing line. And we provide dedicated support to the project teams on the government side from our partners there, especially in that area of the facilitation and engagement with potential investors. So we ensure that potential investors who have shown interest in the project are provided with the information that they need, not only in a timely manner, but also in a comprehensive manner. And lastly, we're a very good mix of domestic and international expertise. Maybe I was a bit too fast on the previous slide, but you'll see that we have a number of experts from Tanzania and Ethiopia in the team. And that mix of domestic and international expertise enables us to do 2 things. One, the domestic expertise is key for understanding the broader investment environment in the country of the particular project. This is paired with international expertise, which allows us to make use of the latest financial instruments and de-risking mechanisms that perhaps domestically are not always known when it comes to the structuring of the financing of the project. So I think I'll leave it here at now for us at now. I just want to really close by saying that we are honored to start this work with our partner TANESCO from Tanzania under the Ministry of Energy and with the Ministry of Water and Energy in Ethiopia. It is really a great honor also to have the distinguished representatives with us tonight in launching this work, and we look forward to taking the next steps together. Secondly, we have to really express our gratitude to our partners from the China Renewable Energy Industry Association and the Institute for Environment and Development Sustainability of Tanzania for hosting and organizing this event with us together, for providing us the platform for this launch here at COP27. I'll leave it at that for now. I look forward to the discussion later on. If you want to know more about our work, partner with us. Don't hesitate to engage with us, contact us, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Moritz, for this excellent presentation. I think we had received quite a lot of questions from different corners. Who are you? So I think we could give you some idea of who we are now. And in the course of the discussions, you will also hear quite more about us. I think these kind of platforms are needed currently in a changing global order. More cooperation is needed to create opportunities also on the African continent. Thank you for this. Now process, I would suggest to move. So, okay, if there's some discussion going on here, but the next point in our agenda is we will have a signing ceremony between Tanzania and Africa Energy Now as a program. We would have hoped also to have Ethiopia on board, but it will happen in the next days and weeks. So I would suggest to move forward with the next step, Moritz, and Honorable Kamis, Hamza Kamis, to go to the next step. Okay, maybe the signing I hear is happening with Mr. Peter Kigandie, who's the Deputy Managing Director Investments from the Tanzania Electric Supply Company Limited. So, Mr. Peter. Okay, thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Engineer, for coming as well on stage. With Engineer Peter Kingai, we have also on stage Mr. Wang Weiquan, the Deputy Secretary General of CREIA, and Mr. Benedict Dönhoff, Manager Market Intelligence and Business Development, CSI Solar. I will go side by side, and I would like to give the floor to Mr. Wang Weiquan, the Deputy Secretary General of CREIA, to speak about the overview report on China-Africa Renewable Energy Cooperation. Weiquan, you have the floor.
PPT 没有 PPT。找不到我的 PPT。啊？上次发给他了，没有我的 PPT。对。
While we are trying to get the presentation ready, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, please hold it for the Q&A session, which will take place later.
Maybe I can begin now because the time is limited. Dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm very happy to be here to share something about the renewable energy cooperation between China and Africa. Basically, I will present 4 parts. First one is the context, and second, the opportunities and the challenges, and thirdly is the China's experience, and finally it's some suggestions and options for the cooperation.有翻译器吗？ Okay. You can see from the slide, in the future, both the GDP and the population will increase very quickly in Africa. And as for the greenhouse gas emissions, Africa only accounts for 4% of the global emissions. However, Africa has the least climate resilience in the world. And as for the energy generation, we can see so far the fossil fuel dominates at the continent, and renewables only account for 2%. So there is a long way to go for renewables in Africa. And also, the electricity consumption per capita of Africa is lagging behind the average level. In particular, so far there are 600 million people at the continent had no access to electricity. During the past years, the renewables increased in the continent, and there are 53 gigawatts of renewables. However, hydropower dominates, accounts for 63. Let's move to opportunities and challenges. In the future, there will be many opportunities. For example, the continent is rich in renewable energy resources, in particular the solar energy. And globally, the cost of renewable is cut dramatically, and it means it can be affordable for the continent. And also the climate efforts and biodiversity protection will help renewables. And the access to energy will create market space. Also, the free trade area will boom the economy. The more developed of the economy, the more energy will be used. So it will also contribute to the renewables. However, there are still many challenges. The rudimentary policy environment, fragmented supply chain, underdeveloped infrastructure, financing challenges, lack of profession, and technical personnel. So let's see what China has done during the past 20 years. Firstly, China made a lot of policies to support renewables. First one is the 21st century agenda of China. It was the first time that renewables as the independent energy variety in China. And secondly, it's the renewable energy law. It played a cornerstone and a solid role for renewables. It includes the overall target system, the mandatory grid connection, and the feed-in tariff, the cost sharing, and the special funds, etc. And also, China made a lot of renewable energy development plan. These plans gave strong signal to the market and enhance confidence of the investors and the project developers. Furthermore, China made a lot of renewable energy standards and gave economic incentives. China also made a lot of policies about climate change. You can see here the NDC targets by 2015 and 2020. The target for non-fossil renewables is increasing. China also carried out a lot of international cooperation and exchanges. The partners include Denmark, Germany, UK, Japan, Canada, etc. Also includes multilateral organizations such as World Bank, GEF, and UNDP. Through the international operation and exchanges, China gained experience and financing, also trained the human resources. Furthermore, China had done a lot of pilot projects. Through the pilot projects, China can get some experience, and then based on the experience, it will enlarge the scale. For example, build a large wind power bases in the north and west China, and Golden Sun demonstration project, Top Runner program. And another experience is emphasize the people's livelihood and market cultivation. In the beginning of 2000, China had done a lot of projects in remote and rural areas, trying to electrify people there. By 2014 or 2015, all the people in China had access to electricity. Here is an example of the people's livelihood and market cultivation. It's located in Qinghai province, and it can benefit 300 villages. And all the beneficiaries are older people. And we all know financing is the blood of the project or the industry. So China tried to get the financing from diversified channels, from the Global Environmental Facility, World Bank, and also CDM projects. Lastly is to strengthen the talent training. From 2000 and now, China had did a lot of training about the renewable energy. By the end of 2021, there are about 50.3 million people working on renewable energy, accounting for 42% of globally. Finally, is some options or suggestions for the China-Africa Renewable Energy Industry Cooperation. Firstly, we should start up or begin with some key African countries, because there are over 50 countries at the continent, so we will select some typical countries. For example, Tanzania or Egypt, South Africa, etc. And secondly, enhance the collaboration on policy promotion. And thirdly, enhance the industry cooperation according to local conditions, especially the localization production of renewable products. And we should integrate capacity building into market cultivation and livelihood improvement. Yeah. Just I mentioned before, there are so many people who have no access to electricity, so we should pay more attention to this problem. And we should strengthen the financing and establish a systematic renewable talent training mechanism to create more jobs at the continent. I will stop here. Thank you so much for your careful listening. And if you want to get the full report, you can scan the QR code here. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Wei Chuan, for your presentation. I think it gave us some idea what China has done so far in its own country, but which potential it exists in cooperation with Chinese companies as well for African countries. So in the interest of time, I will move directly to the next speaker. I will invite Benedikt Dönhoff, Manager Market Intelligence and Business Development at CSI Solar. He will present some concrete case studies of Chinese renewable energy companies in Africa. And I give you the floor, Benedikt.
Perfect, yeah. So, dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thank you to Africa Energy Now and the Chinese Renewable Energy Industry Association for giving me the opportunity to share some insights with you. So we just heard a lot about the general renewable energy potential Africa already has, and I will underline this by giving some examples of concrete projects which have been implemented successfully in the past years already. So I assume there are many people in this room who are well informed about the potential of solar power, but nonetheless I want to reiterate the importance of solar power when it comes to enabling a clean, just and economic energy transition, in particular for Africa. So I'm Benedikt, working for CSI Solar, a private company priding itself in being truly global local, providing mainly PV solar modules and also other solar applications, as well as developing, building, and also operating solar power plants globally. So why solar? It is sustainable, and therefore, by definition, it is also economical. And we've heard it several times, and since more than 4 years already, solar power has become the cheapest source of electricity. And this cost comparison doesn't even include the negative external effects which arises from burning fossil fuels. And on top, a solar PV plant is a quite straightforward business plan. There is not much volatile input factors once the plant is being built, and also the simulations on the radiation gets more and more accurate as we speak. Speaking of irradiance, now in Africa, we're very blessed. We've all mentioned this already about this great irradiance potential we have. To translate this into a more specific term, if we compare the same size installation in, let's say, Germany and in South Africa, then in South Africa, we obtain 60% more electricity output. which again adds to the solar power in Africa being way cheaper than in Europe. So it comes at no surprise that the contribution of solar power to the annual capacity additions is the largest share. So it's the bottom red bar, which is growing every year, and it has now outpaced fossil fuels when it comes to capacity additions. Nonetheless, if we zoom out and we look at the contributions of solar to overall power production, we see that we still play a very marginal role, just contributing to less than 3% of overall production. And this is what we want to change, and I hope I can motivate you with a few of the examples that we'll be giving now. So if you run a gold mine, which needs energy-intensive operations, you may not think at first that solar power could be a viable solution. But in this case, BT Gold, located between Mali and Senegal, decided in favor of a 30-megawatt solar plant combined with storage, which allows them to shut off 3 heavy fuel oil engines per day, which then results in multi-million liters of fuels that you're saving throughout the year. With this heavy acceleration, this business case makes sense in less than 4 years, so the payback time can be generated very, very quickly. So this is a very viable solution for not just this gold mine, but there are many mines in Africa which are far away from the grid and which could work with private with private power purchase agreements to obtain the energy needs they need. So even if a country is already blessed with renewable energy sources, such as Ghana with the Volta River, it may make sense to complement it with solar nonetheless. So we've also heard that Tanzania and Ethiopia has many hydropower plants, but you can also co-locate them with solar PV. So in Ghana recently, this solar plant has been built right next to the hydro dam in case there are lower water levels or the hydro dam needs to be maintained. So this is a good example of co-locating solar with hydropower. At the same time, it's great to see how Ghana is keeping its promises on their NDCs from last year's COP. So we heard that solar is cheap, it is clean, but it can also be deployed very quickly if there is the need and the political will. In the case of this UN refugee camp, where the solar plant was built within less than 9 months, and this speed can even be accelerated if you look into solar containerized solutions. It doesn't always have to be on big utility scale installations. You can already use the substructures that are there. So on the top right, you see the Mall of Africa in Gauteng, which needs most of their electricity during the day to power their air conditioning. So this comes very convenient that this is exactly the time when the power of solar is provided the most. So you have very congruent load profiles between powering the air conditioning and also having the solar irradiance. Having said this, there's very little stress on the grid as well because the power is used directly where it is being produced. So moving from man-made rooftops to man-made water bodies, this is the first floating solar PV plant in Africa. It's located in the vineyards of South Africa. And the initial objective of this vineyard was actually to save water evaporation. So depending on how much water you're covering with the PV installation and how hot the surrounding air is, you can save up to 80% of the evaporation, which will otherwise go into the clouds. We also observed a nice side effect. There's less algae creation, and the water body keeps clean. And on a technical matter, the water has a cooling effect on the solar modules, which then allows them to run more efficiently and also produce more power. So this is a good example how you can save water evaporation and produce power without taking valuable land, which you may need for irrigation. So you can still use these water bodies on the back of a hydropower plant or a pump storage or on these water bodies for farming. So up until now, we've spoken about how solar can replace or supplement already existing sources of power, but we haven't talked about the more than 600 million people who have no access to electricity at all. And this is something we must change, and it is very possible. So we teamed up with a company called ClimateWorks. It's a manufacturer of solar home systems, but they came with this idea of creating a microgrid bottom-up on the base of these individual solar home systems. So this is just an example of a city in Senegal. There are many common settlements like this, where you ask yourself where the next electricity grid is, and you realize it is not viable to extend the grid in these measures. There are many countries in Africa where grid extension is the least economical way forward. So we have to think of a new approach. We know solar home systems already, and they allow for level 1 to 2 electrification when we stick to the electrification levels of the multi-level tiering framework of the USAID. So 1 to 2 tiering means that you have a power system which allows around 4 hours of electricity, 2 hours at night, and that's already good for some basic needs. But then if you design the solar home system in a proper manner, then you have to ensure that it's small enough to be affordable and at the same time big enough to allow productive use. Productive use means that you can also run water pumps, you can also refrigerate your cool your vaccines in your refrigerator, and also your dairy products, and so on. So ideally, a solar home system is also pay-as-you-go enabled. That means that the user doesn't have to buy the whole system at once, but it can pay in monthly installments and eventually then own the system itself after 1 to 3 years. So instead of paying the monthly expenditures for kerosene, for paraffin and oil, you can put these expenditures directly and then later owning the whole solar system on your own. And it's a very little entry level, so you can start very modularly. You can start with a small system, and you can see on the top right picture that you can expand the battery packs in a very simplified plug-and-play fashion, and you can just stack them on top of each other, and you can generate power up to 1 kilowatt if you do this in this modular base. So this is the solar home system as we know it, and then very often we talk about microgrids, which are quite powerful, which are big, and they allow for tier 3 to 4 tiering, tier 3 to 4 level of electrification, which means you can run the power for at least 14 hours and more than 4 hours at night. But it comes at way higher costs, and therefore these systems are rarely self-subsistent and usually always demand external money, either from governments or from development banks. So the idea is to take the best of both worlds, to create a DC mini-grid which takes the modular solar home system and connects it with a DC smart grid. So you take the ownership idea of having a solar home system, you take the connectivity idea of the microgrid, and you create a DC mesh, which is actually a smart grid. And there you can see that the cost per user, they go down to $150. And one reason is that not everybody in the settlement would need to have a solar home system on their own. It's sufficient to have a power control unit, and then you can buy the solar from your neighbors, because this allows peer-to-peer trading. In fact, we have the opportunity in Africa to create one of the most modern electricity grids, more modern than the ones that you would find in Europe, where I'm from. If we were to build the electricity new, the whole system, it would be based exactly on this, bottom-up, decentral microgrids, which are very resilient and modern, and which allow energy trading amongst peers. So this is not just theory. This has already been piloted in 3 countries now, in Zambia, Senegal, and Cameroon. And you can see the blue circles, they're the prosumers, so those households who have a solar home system. And the red ones would be the consumers, which can become prosumers themselves later on. And in this example, you can see that you can start very organically growing solar home systems, which then evolve into becoming a microgrid. So this is a quite new approach to come bottom up and try to scale rural electrification. So I'm very interested to hear your opinions and your thoughts, and I'm looking forward to the discussions that we're going to have later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Benedict. Indeed, very interesting combination, I think. Also for remote areas in many African countries, this can be really something to think about. In interest of time, I will go to our next speaker, Mr. Peter Kigandye, Deputy Managing Director Investment from the Tanzania Electric Supply Company in Tanzania, and he will be telling us about the opportunities for renewable energy investments in Tanzania. Peter, the floor is yours. So can you bring that? Oh, okay. No. Yes, this one. Thanks.
Okay. Is it visible? Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, moderator, thank you very much. On behalf of Managing Director in TANESCO, allow me to make a short presentation on TANESCO and the potential renewable energy investments that are available in Tanzania. Before I do that, let me quickly talk a little bit about TANESCO, which is a governmental utility that is 100% owned by government, and it has the core functions for generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity. This company was incorporated in 1931, and it's vertically integrated. That means we have all three core functions in the same company. That is transmission, generation, and distribution. And as you can see, we have vision of becoming a leading regional provider for quality and affordable electric power. But also we intend to deliver electricity in the most effective, efficient, and competitive for sustainable manner. Looking at the renewable resources that are available in our country, that is hydropower, solar, geothermal, and wind in particular. So we have a total of 15.1 gigawatts of renewable resource, out of which 7.4 is gigawatts is in hydro, about 2 gigawatts from solar, and 650 megawatts on wind, and the new renewable resource that we are exploring now, 5 gigawatts on geothermal. And looking at the spread of the renewable energy investments, at the moment we have a pipeline of hydropower projects, particularly the Kikonge multipurpose project, which is about 300 megawatts, located in the southern part of the country. We also have the Ruhuji hydropower plant, which is, has a capacity of 358 megawatts. This is in the southern highlands around Mbeya region, as well as the Rumakali hydropower project, which is also 222 megawatts. So from what the previous speaker just mentioned, it's better to have, to co-locate or to have hydropower resource available, but as well as developing our wind and solar capacity. On the another project, which is the Singida Wind Project, which is about 200 megawatts, that's also in the western part of the country, as well as the Makambako Wind Project, which is about 150 megawatts. We also have a number of solar power projects. We are looking at 100 megawatts peak for in a region Same, and on the northeast part. We have the central part with the solar project about 60 megawatt, as well as the Manyoni area, where we also want to develop 100 megawatts. Apart from wind and solar, we also have the potential for geothermal, and which is basically along our Rift Valley, which is traversing the middle of the country and the western part of the country towards the south on the Lake Nyasa. So we have about 5,000 megawatts of geothermal potential and 15,000 megawatt in terms of the thermal capacity for heating and other uses. But we have also over 50 potential sites which have been studied here and there, as you can see on the map, or some of the red dots, with the differential geological settings along the Rift Valley. And we also have a range of temperature on these resources between low and to medium, which is about 30 to 150 degrees Celsius. And this is mainly on the sedimentary and the faulty areas, volcanic areas. So the potential projects, we have 30 megawatts in Mbeya region, Ngozi phase 1, but we also have the Kiejo Mbaka, 60 megawatts, and then we also have Ngozi phase 2, which is about 40 megawatts. If you look at the timelines there, between 2024 up to 2025, where we would like to see we achieve about 200 megawatts by then. And through implementation of these projects that are indicated there, including Songwe, 5 megawatts, Luhoi, 5 megawatts, together with the Lake Natron, 60 megawatts. Next. So those are the renewable energy projects that are available in the country, and we would like to develop them to their full potential. So we do welcome investors, including our colleagues that we are partnering with now to invest in the renewable energy in Tanzania. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, for showing which potential Tanzania has for renewable energy investment. And that is the main reason why we are together also here to promote these kind of opportunities. I'm looking at the time, therefore I would like to invite immediately the panelists to the stage. We have already Peter on stage, we have Benedict on stage, and I would like now to invite Ato Abarra Ndeshao, the Senior Advisor to the Minister and Lead International Affairs at the Ministry of Water and Energy of Ethiopia. I would like also to invite, please Abarra, I would like also to invite Licia, President of Power Solution, also to come to the stage. And I would also like to invite Albert Nyaku Jara, Manager Project and Asset-Based Finance from the African Export-Import Bank, Afri-Exim Bank. Albert, please come to the stage. Thank you. Yeah. So, and to continue, Mr. Wang Weiquan will be the moderator of this panel discussion. Wang Weiquan, you have the floor. Go ahead, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to join this session. And this session we have 6 distinguished speakers, panelists. Just now, the speakers introduced a lot of renewable energy development in Africa. So we can see, even though there is a big potential, however, there be few projects developed in Africa. So we should discuss more how to promote the renewable development in Africa. And we all know the renewables cannot succeed without the support of the government. So the first question is for Abidra Indasa. What do you think of the government should do to promote renewables in Africa and in your country, in particular, how to enhance the international cooperation? And also, please introduce what the Tanzania government has done to promote renewables. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Abarranda Shaw, Senior Advisor to the Minister in the Ministry of Water and Energy of Ethiopia. As was mentioned earlier in the opening remark by my Minister, Ethiopia is supposed to be, the hub for the energy in East Africa. We have the very high potential of many of the renewable energy sources, including wind, solar, hydro, and many other geothermal energy sources. So, in brief, Ethiopia has, a second, largest populous country next to Nigeria, with close to 120 million. The population size by itself is an opportunity for private sector investors. And out of 120 million, close to 63 million people of our population is living in darkness, with no access for electricity. And we have only a total of 48% of electricity in Ethiopia, whereby 91% of the current access is generated from the hydropower, and only not more than 12% is generated from other renewable energy sources, including wind and solar. So we have the very high potential of, the renewable energy sources in the country. Close to 91 million people do not have access for clean cooking stove, and they are using, our mothers and ladies are using, biomass energy sources. So this is a showcase of how the energy demand is high in the country beyond, the size of the population. In this regard, recently, Ethiopia, as you know it very well, we are constructing the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in the Abai Basin, Abai River. So we are working hard on that, but that by itself is not enough. And the government of Ethiopia has already enacted a new policy, the energy policy, which focuses more on IPP and PPPs. The independent power producers policy, as well as the public-private partnership policy, under the coordination of the Ministry of Finance and with full engagement and technical lead of our ministry as the Ministry of Water and Energy. There is a good policy environment coming in, and that's to be endorsed very soon by the Council of Ministers and the National Parliament. So that's focusing more on the private sector investment attraction. So the policy environment is going to serve as a good playground for any interested party, as we said. And we have some projects related to solar energy, like in the Ashagoda or Adama wind farm, and the very new project, which is almost to be completed. It's around 98% in Aisha wind farm on the way to Djibouti. Those are the small, big projects. The first, pilot solar projects tested well, and now they are to be injected into the grid system. So these, renewable energy sources could also be injected into the grid system. We have a new project, for example, in Ethiopia, which we have already started as a nexus approach, wind energy food nexus approach. So we are using, solar power energy, for example, among the list of the renewable energy sources. We are to use solar energy sources for, irrigation projects. A project, we call it the DREAM, the Decentralized Renewable Energy Agriculture Modalities, which is financed by JEP, and that's excellently been going on. So that's a kind of multi-sectoral collaboration and cooperation between the different sectors. Our ministry is there, the Ministry of Agriculture as food producer is there, the Ministry of Land Resources are also working with us. So the different sectors, including the Ministry of Finance, are working together. So the multi-sectoral collaboration and cooperation integration is the fundamental basic principle for the renewable energy engagement. Above all, we are working on the government ownership. Earlier, before, it was supposed to be, Ethiopia is not good enough for private sector investment. But this time, we have been to Europe, especially in Germany. We have been to China, we have been to America, and many of the different corners of the world are coming to Ethiopia to invest more on looking into the high demand of the energy in the sector. And above all, there is a very huge industrial park constructions, mainly around the regional towns and cities. So the industrial parks, if you go to Amhara or Oromia or SNNPR in the very big cities in Redwa, border of Djibouti, that is the most energy demand area whereby private sector investments could sell their power into directly to the very huge industrial parks which are situated in one place. The other point we want to address to this session is we have already started regional integration and cooperation. I mean, we are in the time of working together and not alone, and we can't make a change if we are to work alone. So regional integration and cooperation is among the most important key factor that we need to work on and show a case of the energy transition. 4 days before, we have already started energizing Kenya. The Ethio-Kenyan power transmission line has already been launched just while we are here in COP27. We have started energizing Sudan. We have already signed an MOU with South Sudan. We have already agreed with Djibouti, with Somalia. We are working around, and to the extent we want to extend our partnership to the level of South Africa, even crossing Tanzania, Uganda. We are there, of course, and that is the area where we are pushing for the Pan-Africanism, at least for regional integration and cooperation, and the environment we have at hand, the policy environment, the enabling environment under the discussion. We thought both water and energy are supposed to be central for the SDGs. In the absence of water and energy, we can't see any development, progresses. You look into the food, you look into the health sector or the education sector, or in either of the remaining, 15, SDG goals. They are very central for water and energy. And that's what we are strongly encouraging for private sector attraction. And you can have our contact details once we finish this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your introduction and your good advice and insight for renewables development in Africa. It seems that I made a mistake. You are not from Tanzania, you are from Ethiopia. I'm sorry for that. And we all know the wind power and the solar PV is not stable. It will vary from time to time. So we need the strong support from the power grid or energy storage devices. So the next question is for Maharaji Chanda. You are from the TANESCO. So I think you have got a lot of experience in the power grid and both the renewable energy development. So would you please introduce something of some work of your company? I mean, what you have done to support the renewables in your country, and furthermore, what do you think how the renewables and power grid can be integrated in the future? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. In terms of generating power from solar or wind, or most cases, these two options, which are what we call intermittent power supplies, you definitely have to have additional capacity to be able to take care of the intermittent nature of the renewable energy in terms of wind or solar, but in particular solar. So in our country, what we are doing at the moment, we are limiting the generation capacity on the solar development to something like 15 to 20%, depending on available base load. So this is in essence to be able to provide, when you have solar power going off, then you have adequate capacity to meet the demand of the outgoing solar power plant. And that is why at the moment we are looking at, if you looked at our pipeline projects, you will see a number of, looking at 2,000 megawatts of solar, but at the same time we have almost more than equal to that capacity for hydropower. And this is basically to be able to synchronize whenever you have intermittent power going out, then you have equivalent capacity from hydropower plants that will be coming in. So you have the Julius Nyerere hydropower plant, which is also coming on board with 2,115 megawatts, but we are also pushing towards having 2,000 megawatts from renewable energy. That's the best option. But in some cases also we can use combined cycle power generation in line with also solar power plants. So at the moment we limit the capacity for solar development based on the available base load in terms of quick to inject power supply from other renewable resource, which is mainly hydropower. So that's why with the further development in terms of additional hydropower resource, then we can increase also equivalently the solar development. So the more hydropower we have to support or to synchronize the going out intermittent power supply, that's the other option. So at the moment also we are, as you have heard, we have already piloted 2.4 megawatt of wind. So wind and solar can coexist. You have equivalent supply in solar, say 2 megawatts, and then also 2 megawatts of wind. So as solar goes out, wind comes in of the same capacity, and then you provide 24-hour supply of the energy to the customers. So this is how best we would like to operate in terms of intermittent power supply from solar. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful answer. And you know, in China, even the renewable energy is only 16% of the total energy consumption. However, we have taken great effort for the grid connection. In the future, if the proportion is getting higher and higher, we think there is a bigger challenge for China to develop renewable energy in large scale. Maybe it's the same to your company or to your country?
Maybe I didn't catch you clearly, but when we talk about increasing the capacity from renewable energies, it's both wind and solar. So
yeah,
capacity-wise, we would like to see solar and wind coming in to replace or at least to reduce power generation from thermal sources, which means we will have quite a saving in terms of fuel costs. Okay. And going forward, that's the trend. Increase more from renewable resources, as you have heard from our presentation on the compact for powering Southern Africa with the renewable energy. So we would like to have that capacity as high as possible and share the same with our colleagues in the Southern Africa.
Okay.
My colleagues from Ethiopia here, they have started.
Okay.
They are coming in from up in the north.
Thank you.
Renewable. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and let's go ahead. Just now I mentioned that the financing is critical for the project development. So, Mr. Albert, you are from the bank. So, what do you think the bank should do to facilitate renewable energy development in the continent? And what you have done in the past years? Please tell your story. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Good evening, fellow panelists and those in attendance. I understand that the world is hungry for renewable energy, but I also understand that the panelists and those in attendance are also hungry. So I'll try and go through this quickly. As a financial institution, we are normally at the tail end of renewable energy delivery through financing. But at Afreximbank, we try and look at it from a very different perspective, a very different approach to financing. Renewable energy should be reviewed in the global context of climate and sustainable financing, meaning that renewable energy just becomes a pillar amongst several solutions to address our climate challenges. How do we do this at Afreximbank? Having a global perspective, we both look at the global, continental, regional, and local levels. And this is how we at Afreximbank have decided to promote renewable energy stroke sustainable financing. At a global scale, I think financial institutions should ensure and encourage collaboration of initiatives like COP27. In line with that, Afreximbank stepped up to become a principal partner to the sovereign in delivery of a successful COP27, where the science, the promoters of the energy sources, and everybody interested in this sector comes to speak to provide a necessary policy and framework for the development of renewable energy. That's one. Not only did we do that, we assisted in funding a 6 megawatt power plant that is presently funding the conference center. So there's a global perspective that financial institutions need to continuously bring people to the table by encouraging such discussions. At a continental level, we do believe financial institutions are primed to provide the necessary guidance for policy implementation at a continent level. Institutions like ours, which are accredited by the African Union Commission for implementation of Africa-wide policies like AFCFTA, run with such policies to the implementation of renewable energy. Not only do we ensure that the FCA should be implemented to manage overall greenhouse gas emissions by reducing the toing and the froing sorry, there's a bit of feedback, toing and froing of materials from the continent to waste for production and return of those finished goods onto the continent as finished goods. Institutions of our nature should thus encourage localization of the full value chain of the renewable energy solution and be active members in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and solving for both youth and women unemployment at the same time. At a regional level, we do believe there is a lot of synergy that needs to occur, especially on the continent. Certain countries are blessed with certain materials which feed into the renewable energy space. There's a lot of cobalt and lithium that is resident within DRC and Zambia. And in regards to that, we as institutions or as together with one or two other DFIs brought together the necessary counterparties to form a battery initiative which not only looks at renewable energy, but looks at storage beyond the generation of renewable energy. Thus, utilizing the synergies of both Zambia and DRC in coming up with a solution post the generation for storage in battery. Locally, in all of the 52 countries that we are in, institutions largely support solar power plants, wind, the concentrated solar power plants, hydro power plants, and not only by providing dollars into the transaction and the projects themselves, but by building the necessary local frameworks for these renewable energy entities to start operating. I know in Southern Africa, the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Program its genesis was inside a DFI, which was then carried forward to a national and a world-renowned program for successful implementation. So financial institutions do have a role to play right across the full value chain from a global perspective, continental, regional, and local, for not only for renewable energy per se, but for sustainable financing as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. By the end of 2020, it means from 2000 to 2020, globally a total of $2.8 trillion was invested in renewable energy field. However, only 2% are invested was invested in Africa. So there is a long way to go. And next question is for Li Xia and Benedict, because both of you have done a lot of projects in Africa. So what's your experience and lessons from the project implementation? Please tell us your story, and maybe lady first, Li Xia, please.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure this mic is working. Luckily. So thanks for the question. I think I'm from private SME, a small medium-sized enterprises. So I would like to share our experience from private sector. Today there are so many people discussing about megawatt, gigawatt, and the big solar plant. So from small SME, we should not forget there are still 800 million people still in the off-grid situation, which is still in the rural. So it's not really easy for these rural areas to make a big solar plant to get electrified for these rural populations. So according to WHO, there are still will be about 5.3 million people die because of kerosene lamp, because of fired wood for the lighting. So I think for the small SMEs, we should think big, but start from small. If we start from small to implement the practical and master-used products for the rural villagers, it will be easier both for Chinese small SME or African SME to cooperation together. So just to give you an example, this is the small solar light, which is produced and designed in China. But this one will be very easily to be manufactured and assembled in Africa. So maybe the first stage, we can start from trading business, just be a trader. And the second stage, we have to start to thinking about manufacture locally. For example, is a local manufacturer easily in Tanzania and easily in Ethiopia. Because this is designed quite simple products, but this is quite deliverable and distributed easily in the last mile in the rural channels. And the next stage should be partly manufactured locally in Africa. For example, the plastic and also the metal stand is quite easy, and the low technology should be started easily to be partly manufactured in Africa. And the last stage should be about technical transfer. So sometimes we think big and we start from big. So it's not easy for government project, but it's not easy from private SMEs. So that is what I think the good cooperation from Chinese SME to partnership with the African SME to deliverable, affordable, clean energy for the last mile in the rural off-grid areas. So, and the last question is, what I expected from the governments if we want to invest our energies and we want to invest our experience, we want to invest our money even in the African countries. So I think, first of all, is we need a very clear and stable policy. So this is very encouraging all the investors to invest in the African countries. And second, the last 2 years, maybe because of the COVID situation, the currency inflation exchange is a really big challenge. Some countries even about 100% difference, and 70% or 30%. So this is also discouraged the investors to invest in a foreign country which currency is not really stable. And the third is, we expected to reduce tax if we really invest in the manufacturing or equipment. So we would like to see if tax reduction, which encourage us to bring more productivities or manpowers. And the last one, we would like to, we hear something about from the banking today. It's not easy for a private sector to work with banking in a foreign country. But if the government can leverage private sector with the banking system to invest together, or at least to get a US dollar easily, all the investor is expected, the invest will be returned. That is, we call a healthy investment. So if the government can help us to leverage with the banking system for the financial support to invest together, expected the currency exchange rate stable, that will be a great help for investors. And the last, I think, if we learn from the China manufacturing experience, how China industry grows so fast, is in the initial stage, China is get experience from Taiwan, Hong Kong, Korea, Japan, anywhere they bring the technology and start manufacturing in China. So we really need a lot of talent. So we would like to work with the government to training the talent. But what after the training? We should give the job employment. So the small private SMSEs is really working with a very flexible to training the talent and to get a job employment after that. For example, we can build an ecosystem, start from manufacturing, and then training the barefoot engineer after sales service, and build an ecosystem to help the people in the last mile to reduce their replacing parts cost. So this is something like what we would like to see China grow and China experience and China know-how can help Africa to grow together. Thank you.
But I have to stop here, excuse me for this, because we are getting a lot of heat from the venue that we have to stop. We are already 20 minutes over time. So in the interest of having all of the panelists speaking, I know, Benedict, you have already presented, and I'm sure you have a lot to say about this. If you don't mind, I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Engineer Ngozi to make the final remarks. Wei Chuan, I know I am jumping into your presentation, but we are getting a lot of heat right now, and I would suggest that we continue discussing after we finalize it here. But I would like to give now the remarks, the final closing remarks to Engineer Ngozi. Then we have to finish, because otherwise they will just stop our microphones. Doibuchi. Sorry. Engineer Ngozi, bitte.
Thank you, everybody. This session is closed. Thank you so much.
Okay, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, again, in the interest of time, I will just say just a few words to adjourn this very important event, which would have liked to continue it until we finish everything, but unfortunately we can't do it because time is limited. So let me summarize in a nutshell what we have gathered from this event, just like take home. 7 points. 1, Among others, this event has informed us on a number of issues. One is that Africa is lagging in terms of development. This is indicated by the GDP per capita and the energy consumption per capita as presented by the speakers. But number two, the African continent is not spared from the impacts of climate change. And its ability to cope is quite low, which means support from all directions is required. But number three is that Africa has to develop. We have to survive, we have to develop. But again, we have indicated in a number of our documents that this is what we want to do. This includes the NDCs, but includes the policies, the strategies, the master plans, and what you have. But again, we have committed as a continent to respect the international conventions, including the UNFCCC, but also the Paris Agreements, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Sustainable Energy for All. These have been described in a number of our documents just to express our intention to go together with the rest of the world. But again, given the capacity to do so, we need the support from all partners from all over the world. Number four, Africa has significant energy resources, and this includes fossil fuels, but fossil fuels too. We have uranium, plutonium in a number of countries which we can use to develop. But again, we have to respect other laws that govern the peace that we need as a community at all levels. But again, we have renewables, and this includes, as it has been mentioned, wind, solar, geothermal, hydropower, but we have ocean-based energy, which needs some research, but it can contribute to the energy mix. But again, we have biomass. And here, biomass, as Africans, we are talking of renewable biomass. We have non-renewable that we are exploiting without replacing, but we can use biomass, which is renewable. That can have a contribution to our sustainable energy mix. Number five, there are opportunities to cooperate, and it has been demonstrated here that Chinese are ready to partner, but we have a number of other countries who can support us to grow green. But number five, there are opportunities to receive support through bilateral, trilateral, but also multilateral cooperation and through various agreements. Number six, China's experience and readiness to support us has been demonstrated, as it has been clearly mentioned here by the previous speakers. And number seven is that cooperation in the area of renewable energy projects, especially for the projects that are ready for investment, is there. What is required is just to see what could be done through this Africa Now memorandum of understanding that have been signed here. This could be the starting point, but we can do better with the other agreements with the other partners. And number eight is that the ready to invest projects and programs form a good menu for the Chinese investors and other collaborators in the areas of renewable energy. And we could start with 2 countries, as it has been mentioned here by our ministers, that we Tanzanians are ready, Ethiopia is ready, but understand from the previous speakers that Senegal and many other African countries are ready to partner. So we take this opportunity that it's a very important opportunity, and let us take this opportunity and work together towards realizing good projects. And here I should say we should start from small to large. We shouldn't leave anything, because anything is good for Africa depending on where you are and depending on the complexities of geographical locations and the other issues. So we should start small, good. We should talk big also. We should think big, act locally, think globally. So let me, at this particular juncture, thank you all for coming. And thank you for the presenters and all those who had the opportunity to speak. I know there are a number of you who would like to contribute, but we don't have that time. But I think we have the opportunity to interact after this. After saying these few remarks, let me just bring the floor to the end and wish you all good participation in the ongoing proceedings of the COP, but also wish you good journeys back home, and let us continue communicating so that we come now not with the mega words, but let us have mega actions bring about megawatts. I think we are talking of megawatts. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, everyone.